right, thank you so much to the panel, and we'll get started with our first question. And this question can be answered by anyone on the panel. Some of the questions I'll ask specifically to some of you, but for this question, any of you may answer. Why is it so important for people to expand their knowledge of Islam? Why is this important?
Assalamu alaikum and good evening to all of you. I want to start answering that question by reciting a verse from the Quran and telling the meaning, the interpretation of the verse. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولا تجادلوا أهل الكتاب إلا بالتي هي أحسن وقولوا آمنا بالذي أنزل إلينا وأنزل إليكم وإلهنا وإلهكم واحد ونحن له مسلمون صدق الله العظيم. Quran, as Muslims believe, is the very word of God revealed through Angel Jibreel to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And in this verse, he said, "Argue not with people of the book." People of the book in Quran are Christian and Jew. So they are recognized by God, by the word he gave to Muslims, that he give them book too. You are not the only one I give the book. I give book to people before you. So argue not with the people of the book, accept of what is the best. And said, we believe in what was revealed to us and what was revealed unto you. Our God and your God is one God, and to him we submit. Such a verses in the Quran, many people don't know that they exist. I feel my day is blessed because this morning I had class at Mercer University. Rabbi and I, we co-teach Western religion, where he teach Judaism and I teach Islam, hands in hand with students. And their homework this week is to read the birth of Jesus Christ in the Bible and in the Quran. And many people don't know that Jesus is even mentioned in the Quran. They have to go through 2 chapters in the Quran to compare and see the similarity and the differences. So it's very important that we know about each other and educate ourselves, because there is so much we have in common than what we have in differences. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Rabbi?
I'll take a shot here. The world of Islam is a very big world. And how are we going to know about that world if we don't take the time to learn something about it? And especially if, for one reason or another, we are totally against learning anything about it. Our world in this 21st century has become very, very small. The internet has hooked us up to everywhere in this world. And if we are really going to fulfill the biblical command to love one another, then we have to be really open to the people who are around us. I spent 10 minutes or so before this we started here talking to Serena, who is really a lovely person, and I have things in common with her. All of you do too. But you don't know that unless you interact with people who are different than you. So I think it's incumbent upon us to learn about Islam and Buddhism and Hinduism and Taoism and the other major faiths that are in this world, just so that we have some sort of context in which to understand people and not push them away.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? All right, sure, Pastor.
Hi, I've read recently that it's easy for humans to notice differences from a distance, but to discover similarities, you have to get up close. And if we refuse to get up close, then we can't find where we actually have a lot of common ground that we can share with each other. And I'll tell you right up front that for a lot of my life, was just ignorant about facts. Completely ignorant, and never thought to pursue, never thought to have the opportunity. And it's only in recent years that eyes become opened to what we do share in common. And if I may, and I'm just sharing something that I just heard yesterday, listening to another pastor's voice who's speaking of his friend who is an imam, and he mentioned a translation of a passage, please correct me if I butcher this, but he says, "We have made you male and female peoples and tribes that you may know one another." And that's to recognize that there are differences, but it's so that we discover those differences and we share those things and find what we do have in common. And I think that's why we have to expand our knowledge as well.
Thank you. All right, let's go on to the second question. And this can be answered by any of you on the panel. What do you see as the most disturbing misconceptions that the average American has about Islam? What's the most disturbing misconception that the average American has about Islam? Yes, Dr.
Okay, I think
Shabir.
Islam, the first thing that comes to mind in an average American is that Islam permits terrorism. And that is an unfortunate thing that people think about. So this is far from truth. Islam does not promote terrorism of any kind. The sanctity of life is the utmost thing in Islam. And actually, Allah or God says in the Quran, if anyone murders an innocent person, it will be as if he murdered the whole humanity. And if anyone saves the life of one person, it is as if he saved the life of whole humanity. So the life is extremely important. So there is no room for terrorism at all in Islam. There are some group of people, so-called Muslims name, and they use the religion or hijack our religion and use it wrongly. But it does not mean that, the whole Muslim nation has to be brushed with the same stroke.
Thank you.
I think, just to go off of what Dr. Anika said, there's a verse in the Quran, 256. It says, "There is no compulsion in religion." And so that kind of just shows that we don't expect everyone to be Muslim. People are created differently, different religions, and that's fine. We don't expect everyone to be a Muslim, and we're not going to kill you if you're not a Muslim. And a lot of people do think that way because of current events that are happening in certain parts of the world. And these groups of people are not actually Muslim, because in the Quran it clearly states that you cannot force anyone into religion. If you do that, then it simply will not count in God's eyes. A second misconception is that we don't believe in Jesus, and that's completely not true. Jesus is a prophet in our religion. We just don't believe that he was the last prophet. we believe that after Jesus came another prophet. And that's really the most, like the biggest difference there. Jesus is mentioned in the Quran several times, and so is Mary. There's a whole chapter dedicated to Mary in the Quran, and we recognize her, we love her, and you know, she is very well celebrated in our religion. And the last misconception is that we worship another God or some different God from Christians or the Jewish faith, when that's not completely true. We do call our God Allah, but Allah is just the Arabic word for God. It's simply a language difference. So people who don't know Arabic would call our God God, and people who speak Arabic will call him Allah. So it really is just a language difference. It's not a different person. The God that we believe in is the same God that you believe in, with the same traits, the same characteristics, and just the same overall, you know, vibe, I guess. So, yeah, that's basically it.
Thank you.
I want to add to that.
Sure.
This is a very important question, and it's very broad. So what I did, I brought some brochure with me that can help you clarify that question more. It's called Misconception About Islam. It's available at the door. Maybe you can take one with you while you are living here. It gives questions like, Muslims do not share good value with non-Muslims. It's not true, false. Muslims worship a new God, like she said, called Allah. Do you know there are about 20 million Christians who speak Arabic? And how they call God, they are Christian. Anyone here know? If you know, raise your hand. How Christian Arab call God? No, yes, the lady there. Huh? All right, you hear that? Yeah, there is Allah also in Christianity. So that's what she said. And this brochure is available at the door. Take one with you, because education and lack of education, ignorance, is the key to all these things. And with education, we can clarify a lot of things. Thank you.
Thank you. This particular question, oh, Yipram, thank you.
So I don't know exactly how I'm going to frame this, but I'm going to do two things. One, think about my own personal experiences growing up in Iran as a member of an Armenian community, and Armenians being Christian. So I grew up with some of those traditions within a majority Islamic population or an Islamic society. And in that experience, I think I felt the kind of tension that separates communities from one another, religious communities or ethnic communities, in a sense that may be the reverse of, or in a way also not reverse of, what a person of Islamic faith may experience here in the United States. So I do want to read something that I brought with me that Edward Said wrote about this particular issue, or something that generally relates to this issue. And in some of my remarks and responding to the questions as we go along, I need to clarify that I've borrowed a lot or been influenced and inspired by his work and his thoughts on Islam, although he was nominally a Christian Palestinian. As our world grows more tightly knit together, the control of scarce resources, strategic areas, and large populations will seem more desirable and necessary. Carefully fostered fears of anarchy and disorder will very likely produce conformity of views, and with reference to the outside world, created distrust. This is true of the Islamic world as it is of the West. At such a time, which has already begun, the production and diffusion of knowledge will play an absolutely crucial role. Yet knowledge is understood in human and political terms as something to be won to the service of coexistence and community, not of particular races, nations, classes, or religions. The future augurs badly. That is to say, if knowledge is understood in human and political terms as something to be won to the service of coexistence and community, not of particular races, nations, classes, or religions, the future augurs badly. So I want to go back to my own personal experience. This whole tightening and this idea of tension, I sense from both communities as I look back on it. The kind of advice that as Armenians we received from our parents about avoiding, to the extent possible, association with Muslims. And then a certain kind of a membership in the Islamic aspect of Iranian society, which was one of the outsider. So one reinforces the other. And I think in a way it speaks to what Said talks about here, and it also speaks to the idea of knowledge as understood in human and political terms as something to be won in the service of coexistence. So in order for that coexistence to come about, what are some of the challenges that we have to overcome in terms of understanding one another and in terms of forming perceptions of one another?
Thank you. This question is for Dr. Shabir and Ms. O'Day. As a female, what do you think are the greatest mistaken beliefs of your life as a Muslim woman?
I think when somebody looks at me as a Muslim woman, the first thing they see is hijab. And instead of seeing it as a head covering, they feel that that's like a brain covering. So we get all kinds of questions all the time. Somebody would just in the elevator would ask, so do you have hair? Or how long is your hair? And somebody asked my friend the other day, can you donate your hair? So we get all kinds. Anyways, some people ask really genuine questions, genuinely, like what is the hijab for? I tell them it is the order from God, from Allah. So first commandment for the woman is to dress modestly, and hijab is part of the dress. It is not the whole thing that depicts modesty, but also means it's about noble speech, modesty, and dignified conduct. So hijab is just a part of it. Some people, when my daughter started taking hijab, people started asking her questions, and she had to go through that. She was the only one taking it in her school, in her high school in Macon. But I think those who ask genuine questions and get answers get to know it. So I think it is better to ask questions if there is anything that you are mystified with. I think the hijab empowers the women, and it is beautiful to us. That's all. That's the first thing, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to kind of go off of what Dr. Anika said, often people look at me or other Muslim women who wear this headscarf that we're oppressed and that we're forced to cover up, but really that's not the case. It helped assert my identity, and it helped me become a stronger person, especially wearing it in the current political and social climate that we're in right now. It has grown me into such a stronger person, and I never regret my decision. Another misconception about women in Islam is that Islam rejects women's rights, but actually that's not the case. In pre-Islamic times, before the 6th century, women were not given the right to inherit property, own property, or anything of that sort. So when Islam came about in the 6th century, the Quran kind of demanded those rights for women. The Quran stated that women are given the right to own and inherit property, and Islamic law actually demanded that women have the right to education. So it is a duty as a Muslim, man or woman, to get an education as best as you can. And just to remind you all, these rights in terms of property were not given to the West until the 18th century. And additionally, women's consent in Islam is needed for a legitimate marriage contract. So in other words, forced marriages are not acceptable. It does happen, but that's a cultural thing, it's not a religious thing. In Islam, you cannot marry a man if you don't agree to it. It's just not legitimate. Another example is that in pre-Islamic society, oftentimes families would bury their daughters alive once they were born. They just didn't want to have a daughter. This is not an Islamic thing, it was a cultural thing. So when Islam came about, there's a verse in the Quran, it's 81:8 and 81:9. It says, "And when the girl who was buried alive is asked, for what sin was she killed?" So in other words, this verse kind of put a stop to this barbaric act, saying that you can't kill your daughters just because you don't want to have a girl. That's not okay. God created us men and women. You're going to have a girl, it's going to happen. So it kind of put an end to all of that, and it actually condemns parents who are disappointed with the birth of their female newborns. And lastly, Prophet Muhammad was all about women's rights himself. One of his last commands before his death was, "I command you to be kind and considerate to women, and it is only the generous in character who is good to women, and only the evil who insults them." So our very own Prophet, preached about treating women equally, properly, with dignity and respect. So, Islam really does elevate the women's status in many ways that did not happen in pre-Islamic times and even in the West. These thoughts and these rights were not given to the West until the 18th century.
All right. To show a common thing between our faith, I want to ask this question to the audience. In all the images that we see about Mary, the mother of Jesus, what she's wearing over her head? If you know the answer, raise your hand. Yes. She's wearing something? That's number one. Number two, Mother Teresa, one of very significant human being of our time. What she's wearing? She's wearing something, right? Number three, when I came to this country, I thought all Americans only wear blue jeans and T-shirts, until I went to the mall and I saw these ladies wearing long robe and they have tiny something over their head. And I was visiting my friends, so I kind of stopped by. I was curious. And I asked her, I said, "What religion do you follow?" They said, "We are Amish." I said, "Why you dress this way?" And she said, "Bible commands us to dress modestly." Is that true? So what is in Islam is the same thing in Christianity and Judaism. It's okay to be different, like pastors say. But Islamophobic will say, no, hijab is oppressive, and now what they do nowadays, they work with those women and they pull their hijab. Something unbelievable. But you are here to take this message with you and spread to the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this question is for Pastor Portwood, Rabbi Schlesinger, and Imam Fafana. Think back to the years before September 11, 2001. What is the biggest difference in views about Islam that you have observed in our country, our community, and in your congregation or religious community as a result of those events?
Well, looking at most of you were students here, I would say that you were very, very young in 2001 when this happened. For me, I would tell you that that was probably the most bizarre day in my life. It was like watching some kind of a James Bond, film where, the world is going to hell and you're not exactly sure where it's all going to end. Nobody really knew what was going on at the time. I think what ultimately happened was that Islam was coupled with terrorism. And that's been a very difficult coupling to break. And unfortunately, I see we've got another question. I'm going to save my comments for then. But I think that coupling and the hysteria that followed, and the fear, the lasting fear that hysteria has sort of left with us all is something that was unfair, and that we really need to take a long, hard look at to see if it's really true, and something that we feel as a country based on personal, individual, and religious freedom that we want to carry on with moving forward. But there's another question here that I'm going to take the time to answer, and I'll be a little more detailed about all that.
I agree with Rabbi. I was teaching high school at the time when 9/11 happened, and just remember somebody coming in to say what happened. I almost didn't believe what was taking place, and I think we were all kind of in a place of lack of understanding and trying to make sense of some things. And I can't speak. I will honestly admit I'm a white male, so I sit in a position of privilege just because of how I was born. I'm not proud of that. That's just the way it is. So there are things I can't understand, things I can't begin to grasp. But I just looking at it, I think we went from a position of maybe being blindly ignorant of some things to being fearfully ignorant, which causes people to lash out. And after 9/11, people looked for an object of hate and had to center it on somebody, and that's wrong. That is absolutely incorrect to try and I think you use the phrase to paint with a broad brush for the actions of an individual, to put that on a people group, and that's hate, and that's not okay as far as I'm concerned. And I think that's where part of that shift happened at that time.
Thank you.
For me, I was one of the luckiest people to visit New York City pre-September 11 and after September 11. My first visit to the United States was in October 2000. And my friend took me to downtown, the Twin Tower. I mean, my whole entire life, I did not see anything so pretty, so significant like the Twin Tower. That day, in October in New York, the weather is not raining, it's not dark. So you see these two giants standing in Manhattan. I spent a couple of times looking at it and looking down and looking at it again. And then going back, I was living in Malaysia. Here in 2001, that a friend of mine called me. He said, if you are sitting, stand up. If you are sleeping, wake up. The end of the world has come. I said, what are you talking about? He said, open your TV screen. And I see these two buildings being hit with the airplane. It's the most disgusting, the most horrible things you can ever imagine in our time. I could not even think that something like that will happen. But it happened, and it changed everything. Now, when I was invited to come to the United States again, I said, no, I'm not coming. Because people who did this, I'm going to be a victim for what they did. Why should I go? But people who invite me insist that I should come. So I skipped 2001, I skipped 2002. 2003, they were able to convince me to come. I decided to come. I landed in Minneapolis. So sometimes custom officer, they will take someone randomly from the line. And we were standing. I happened to be that person. Someone came and called my name, take your luggage, come here. I said, that's it. I said, I'm not coming. Look what happened. So he took me to the room, and he says, anything in your bag that's, significant? Are you bringing any money? Are you bringing? I say, no, you can check anything. And he checked my passport. I'm coming on R1, religious workers. Say, you are Muslim? I say, yes. He said, do you have Quran? You have prayer log? I say, no. You can touch anything in that bag. And after checking everything, he said, we randomly check people, but here is my card. If anyone did anything to you that harass you, anything, call me. And I passed before the whole line finished. He said, we do this a random check. You are not targeted or pinpoint in the crowd. But it creates fear in the Muslim too, innocent Muslim. Now, from 2001, 2003, 2004, 2005, came every year, and Muslim community here, they need imam. They say, can you stay? I said, let me finish my school. When I finish, I will decide. 2007, I decided that I will move here. And I brought my family with me. None in any of these things. I will be lying if I say someone targeted me or discriminated me at immigration or no. In fact, next week, I'm going for my citizenship interview in Atlanta. That's how great this country is. This, I'm learning my question and answer. I'm serious, yes. I've learned a lot about government, and of course, I speak good English now. Is my English good? All right, it's getting better. But what I want to say is our relationship doesn't start from September 11. Muslim-Christian relationship start when Islam was born. Prophets say, go to Abyssinian king who is Christian, and that's the only place you will be safe when they make and use to prosecute Muslims. Without Christian in Abyssinia, Islam will not survive. That's the beginning of our relationship. With America, our relationship, many of you maybe doesn't know. When America declared independence, what was the first country? Which country was the first country to acknowledge America independent? If anyone know in this crowd here, yes. Morocco. It was a Muslim country. So we have a lot of in common and friendship. Now, to make September 11 the beginning, I know it was horrible, but we have to look way beyond. We have long history of friendship, sometimes fight and problem here and there, but we have rich history bigger than that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. This question is for our panelists that practice the Muslim faith. For those who have lived abroad, what has been your experience in practicing Islam in the U.S. versus practicing abroad? For those who have lived only domestically, what has been your experience practicing Islam in the South versus other parts of the U.S.?
Well, I'm from Pakistan, so practicing faith over there, I mean, the women do not go to the mosque. Here we regularly go to the mosque. And surprisingly, I find it easier to follow my faith over here. Because if I start taking hijab, which I did like 15 years ago in Pakistan, then the whole family or aunts, and they would have something to say about it. So why are you taking it, and you should not take it, and all that. But here, whatever we want to do, I mean, I do it. And as I was telling you, when my daughter started taking hijab, she was in high school, and from Pakistan, and when I put her pictures on the Facebook, I would get calls from Pakistan, and they say, so why did she start taking it? People are going to target her and all that. So I think to some extent, I have freedom of religion, which is great. I can do whatever I want. As far as practicing, I think we have if I live in a place where there is mosques and a Muslim community, it is great. Then you have a sense of belonging. However, we do miss the holidays, that when it's holidays like Eid that we celebrate, that is totally different. The whole environment is not what it used to be at home. So that is the difference. I have lived in Mississippi, Louisiana, Wisconsin, and Georgia, so I have been up and down. I did not find much difference as far as practicing goes, going to the mosque and all, except when I was in Natchez, Mississippi, and there was no other Muslim family or mosque, then it's, a little bit different. We had to go to Baton Rouge, Louisiana to go to the mosque and to get halal food.
Thank you.
So I've lived in a lot of different places growing up, but I'm going to compare two different places right now. Living in Lebanon, which is in the Middle East, and living in Virginia here in the United States. So by far, living in Georgia, in Milledgeville specifically, has been the hardest practicing Islam. It was definitely a whole lot easier in Virginia. There was just more Muslims there, better established community, and I really did not feel discriminated or marginalized in any way during my time there. In Lebanon, it's really the same thing for me personally. It was pretty easy, being a Muslim there. There's a lot of mosques around me, a lot of churches around me, so Muslims and Christians in Lebanon coexist peacefully, and there's really no issues. So for me, here in Georgia, it is the hardest to practice Islam. Then again, in Virginia, as Dr. Anika said, there's no recognition of the holidays, which is always difficult. Who wants to go to class on Christmas? You just don't want to do that. So that is kind of one of the downsides. But overall, in the United States, Virginia was definitely easier than here.
I live in 4 different countries. In Guinea, where I grew up, in Saudi Arabia for 5 years, in Malaysia for 7 years, and in the United States now for 10 years. I was lucky enough, like she said, living in Malaysia, Muslims make 60% of the population, Chinese make up 30% of the population, and Indian make up 10% of the population. Total different ethnicity, background, religion, everything. But they have managed to put their fabric together. And that country, if you want to visit Muslim country and see, is there any Muslim country I can visit? There is no terrorism, visit Malaysia. You're going to go back again. So what I've seen in U.S., different from abroad, overseas, is here in America, what we call religious freedom or freedom of religion, is in my textbooks here. He said, you can practice any religion or practice no religion. That's the answer to it. I know if they ask me, I can answer that. But for us, it's very true. We live it. In many other places, let's say, for example, France, which is one of the very high regard democratic country. But right now in France, if girls decide to wear hijab, government law ban her from going to public school. Isn't that oppression of the woman? That girl can be left ignorant for her life, that's okay, because of her choice to wear the hijab. In America, you don't see like that. My 2 girls, when we came here and they decided to wear hijab, I told them no. I'm serious. I said, I don't want you to be, cause problem in the school and all these things, because what people are saying, not what I experienced. But I went to school, talked to the principal, and she said, talk to the teachers. If they are okay, we have no problem. And it's been almost 10 years now, no bad experience at all. They get all support from the teachers, from their friends, from school. My daughter played band for Northside High School. And when she went to the band with her hijab, the band color blue, orange, and white, and she kept changing her hijab to different color. She became the most celebrated in the band. And this is true. So liberty and freedom we have in this part of the world, which I consider to be part of God himself. If we minimize this for ourselves by targeting group, it might be a small group today, this group and this group, but it's going to affect in long term. So the more we celebrate our liberty, especially religious liberty and freedom that we have here, the more God is going to be with us. And we enjoy it every single day. There is no place like America when you come to that. From the places I've experienced. Thank you.
and this question can be answered by anyone on the panel. How has the entertainment industry, particularly the television and movie industry, contributed to Islamophobia?
Oftentimes when we watch movies or just any form of media, we always see the bad guy wearing, has some crazy long beard, wearing some turban, just always the crazy bad guy, and he's always a Muslim, and that's just really racist and crazy. And, as kids, we watch that stuff, and we're like, oh, okay, this character is the bad guy, and you grow up just kind of keeping that in your mind when you watch these movies, and then over time, you just kind of naturally associate that image with Islam and terrorism and killing and just being the evil character overall. And unfortunately, that's like embedded in all films and TV shows, and it's crazy that that's even allowed to happen, but it's a thing. And that's definitely one way it adds to Islamophobia, and it really should stop.
Just coming from that, I can think of TV shows like Homeland, movie like True Lies, all of them depicting negative story about Muslims. And first of all, if they show Arab, it's always a Muslim. Although Arabs make like 20% of the Muslims, and they always show either it's barbaric, terrorist, or a villain. So that's how the media is.
And, I want you, when you go back, there is a website called Islamophobia.org, ORG. Check that. On their website, they said Islamophobia is an industry, and is financed by about $200 million. That includes media, newspapers, people who want to create fear in other people and get paid for it. Now, movies, like she said, what is the correlationship between someone blowing himself up in terrorism, but before that came up, you hear the adhan, Allahu Akbar, Allah. That sounds so peaceful and so nice, but this one is blowing himself up. Or you see people praying. Muslim prayer is totally silent and quiet and calm. Someone is praying and someone blooming. So this is to brainwash people, that people who do this are these people. Although Muslims are number one victim of terrorism, terrorists kill more Muslims than anybody else. So, and we need the help of the whole world to help us. And every religion at one time has been hijacked by some extremists to their advantage, their political agenda. And that's what terrorists stand for. But it has nothing to do with the religion itself.
Okay, thank you. And this question is to Pastor Portwood, Rabbi Schlesinger, and Imam Fafana. How strong is the sentiment for interfaith efforts in Middle Georgia? What has the interfaith community done to combat Islamophobia and misconceptions about Islam? And finally, has these efforts been impactful?
Okay, I'll go. I can only tell you what goes on in Macon and the areas. I think that the clergy in particular become sensitized to how the Muslim community, the Islamic community, is being spun in America today. The women's interfaith group that Anika can tell you more about than I can, that has grown in Macon, Warner Robins, basically began as a women's group from religious congregations there who get together, I guess, on a monthly basis and have programs teach each other about themselves. But it was the faith community that really produced that. I remember there was an incident with the mosque that's on Vineville was that spray paint? Graffiti?
Vandalized.
Yeah, it was vandalized. And this is in, a really nice part of Macon. Well, the religious community sort of came together and demonstrated its support for its Islamic brothers and sisters in a way that I hadn't seen in Macon, but in a way that was embracing and really necessary. So I think the interfaith community, which really sort of thrives on good interfaith relations, is there. I think the interfaith community has the local Muslim communities back, and I think that any ill will that is purported against that community is going to meet a response from the people who really feel with fervor that we really are brothers and sisters, and that attack against you is an attack against me. Right. And I'm going to respond, in that sort of a way.
Thank you.
On my part, when I first came here, I was lucky to meet Rabbi Larry Schlesinger. And back then, they have Clergy Association of Downtown Macon. And that was the best thing ever happened to me as an imam and a religious worker. But you don't want to do this job when you're alone. It feels very boring. He introduced me to the pastors, the other religious workers in Macon, and since then we've been friends. Like I told you, right now we co-teach together. He teaches Tuesday, I teach Tuesday, he teaches Thursday. But we'll escape to each other class and sit down and listen, what is being taught in this class. So from our friendship and some other, religious people in Macon and Warner Robin, Middle Georgia, the women interfaith was born. Sisters put together, let us talk about food today in your tradition, in your culture. Who doesn't want to eat food? Right? Especially when it's coming from different, part of the world. And this woman it kept growing and growing. Also, we will have conferences on this. We have had 2 or 3 annual conferences on interfaith dialogue, to teach people about each other. The key thing to this is education, because ignorant, if you leave, the terrible thing to be worse is human brain, or fed it with ignorance, something that, and anything you don't know, you fear that thing. If you don't know, you fear. So you have to give people an excuse. But can we educate people? Of course, yes. And I'm going to name 2 books for you if you want to start as college student, because you are the future leader, tomorrow. And that, you can make the world better. But if you choose the other way to go, of people who want you to be ignorant about these things, you will not. Kirby Kazi, he wrote the book called Is God a Christian? It's not challenging, but he talked about Hinduism, Islam, many faiths. His own experience growing up in the South. It's a very good book to read. Another book is called Deadly Misunderstanding. This book is written by former congressman who was Islamophobic back then. He was expert in Islam. He talked bad about Muslims. Those Muslim, Islam is not even a religion. It's ideology. Quran invite people to kill others. He was talking anything he called. And people were very excited, anything he said. But then back after the conference, one woman pulled him out on the side. He said, you talk about Muslim faith, you know everything. I have a question for you. Have you read Muslim book Quran? Have you read any book on Islam? And he said, with my knowledge and congressman, the power I have, I feel 0 to that woman. Because I did not. And I decided I'm going to go and buy Quran to read it for the first time. I went to the bookstore, And I could not even let people see me buying Quran, that I'm the one who's buying Quran. I hide myself, I buy a copy. And when I read it, I said, oh my God, what a deadly misunderstanding. I find more commonality in this book to my own book than what I taught. But I let myself being educated by ignorance and fed by ignorance. I'm not going to do that again. So if you want to start, the world is closer than ever before. Hatred and this ignorance is not going to be the way. People, I came to this conference with Rabbi. We parked, I came in my car, he said, come, let's go together. I said, Rabbi, let me drive. He said, no, I'm going to drive. That's how we reach here. Make friends. Know someone who's outside of your faith. Know them in person. Don't judge them from distance. And for me, I've been blessed to know people outside of my faith whom I feel sometimes closer to me than people in my own faith. That's how I can put it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, and I just want to say thank you for showing us the way in bridging that gap to forge those relationships, to all of you for doing that. I feel that's an area that we're deficient in here in Milledgeville, in a small town, and one that I'm eager to start working towards. And Rabbi, kind of echo some of your words. If our friends are not at peace, then we are not at peace either. And we've got to figure out how to work that way together. So thank you guys for leading the way.
Okay. And we're running out of time, so this will be the last question. We didn't get a chance to get all of them. And this is for anyone on the panel, what recommendations do you have for combating Islamophobia as an individual and as a community?
I'll be quick. I think as an individual, get to know a Muslim, just like Imam Adam said, you cannot know. Those who don't know any Muslim, don't have friends, are the ones who have the most anti-Islam ideas. So best thing for you is to get to know a Muslim. And I don't know about Milledgeville, but yeah, we have Macon and Warren Robins, we have a lot of Muslims. As a community, I think since I'm involved in the Women's Interfaith Alliance of Central Georgia, that was a beautiful forum that got together. We were 15 women who got together, and now we are up to 80, 90 members. So it has grown. People see it come for the first time, like it, what they hear. We discuss different topics, and again, like everybody's saying, find more commonalities than differences. So that is a beautiful forum. And then forums like this, which we have right now, this is also a wonderful beginning for education of the masses.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Yiprim?
Yeah, I'm going to just read what I wrote about this when I was thinking about the question. I think that the idea of combating as a concept is not what I feel comfortable with in response to this question. And one of the reasons is because of the importance of, I guess, discourse and words we use to talk about ideas and talk about situations. So the word combating means taking action to reduce, destroy, and prevent, as well as to stand up to counter and resist, which is probably how it was meant in the context of the question that's been raised. However, to me, what I'm trying to struggle with is every time a word is said, all of its, or uttered, all of its connotations are raised at the same time. And then there are connotations within it of a word that have, because of societal reasons, prominence. And so if combating, let's say, has the prominence, the idea about it that's prominent is reducing and fighting, then it doesn't necessarily take us to a place where it's about, the effort is about bridging gaps and engaging in dialogue. So I think for me, a more comfortable situation and a place and a position to be is to start dialogue between religions and start dialogue with the intention of reconciliation and deeper understanding. So that's my response to.
Thank you.
Yes. I have brought a paper with me. I go to conferences, but I take good things from other people that can be implemented in my own society, in my own community as well. This is called Standing Up for Others. It's a pledge that anyone can make to yourself. And if the organizer agree, we can make this pledge at the end of this conference. It said, you say your name, you raise your hand, while interacting with the member of my own faith, or ethnic, or gender community, or with others. If I hear hateful comment from anyone about members of any other community, I pledge to stand up for the others and speak up for the challenge bigotry in any form. If you do that to yourself, that's the beginning, because the problem is being in the majority sometimes. When I was in Malaysia, it's Muslim majority country. But one of my best friends was a Jewish guy who came and opened factory there. And he was alone by himself. Can you imagine celebrating your Hanukkah, your Passover, and you are the only one, except few people from the embassy. So when the celebration comes, that's why I really feel deep for the minority. Being friend in business, we end up being Jewish when a celebration comes to increase the congregation. Because after all this, if you are by yourself, it's not fun. So we will go and fill up the room, and he will invite the rabbi from New York to come and talk to us about Judaism. And since then, my whole worldview about Jew and Judaism changed to this point. So we have to make this pledge to ourselves to start with. Here in America, we have great people. When Muslim ban was announced and people came and they were blocking the airport, did you see what happened? American from all kind of life, Christian, non-Christian, they went to the airport where Muslims could not pray out of fear, and they surround them. You can make your prayer, we are here, nothing will happen to you. So this, to stand up for others and within our own community. Believe it or not, even Muslim, when hurricane happened recently in Florida, we opened our mosque for people to come in. And guess who came? Was Muslim and non-Muslim to fill up the mosque, to use it as shelter. But even Muslim who came, majority of them were Shia. So you don't have even your own faith, everybody having the same view. Start within your own faith. What makes Methodists different from Baptists? What makes Baptists different from Jehovah's Witness? If you ask many, they don't know, including Muslim. What makes Shia Yazidi different from Shia, this other Shia and this group? They don't know. So know, and it's okay. God tells us it's okay to be different. And that's how he created us anyway. Those who doesn't want to be different, they have problem. And that problem, only God can solve it. We cannot solve it. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll have to stop here so that we can open the floor up for questions from the audience. But let's give a round of applause for that.
We will open it up for Q&A.
I probably don't need the microphone. You guys are all up there from all different religions, and I hear, let's get along. Why don't you guys just convert to each other's religions? And the point I'm getting at is, there is a difference between all of that. Otherwise, we would just be one religion. Do you find that your religions are tolerant or acceptant? And to me, there's a big difference. Tolerating something is just putting up with it, whereas accepting it is truly engaging with them. And I think there's always some level of recruitment in religion. We want you to come to our church. We want you to come to our mosque. There's always this trying to gather a bigger congregation, audience, whatever you want to call it. And I just want to know, how do you feel about whether or not you are really accepting of the religion or you're tolerant of it?
I'll take a shot at that first. One of the most fundamental principles of Judaism is that the stranger shall be to you as the homeborn, because you were strangers and parenthetically mistreated in the land of Egypt. I don't think we're talking about conversion. I mean, I'm not going to stand up here and tell you that Judaism is right and Islam and Christianity is wrong. Judaism happens to, work for me. I'm very, comfortable with it. But my goal is not to convert anybody, up here to my own specific beliefs. If people find that meaningful and they, want to do that, well, that's fine, but I'm not going to impose my beliefs upon anybody else. I think what we're talking about here is really respect for one another. I've always said that, and this is kind of a sort of in parable form, but if the kingdom of God is like in the middle of a country, and you've got a road coming in from the north, south, east, and west, and the southwest and the southeast. I mean, you've got all these different roads coming towards the kingdom of God, and it's not that one road is any better than any other road, because they all lead to the same place. I think what we're talking about is respecting the roads that other people are on, which may be different from our own. I would just tell you that Dr. Marani and Serena and Anika are, on a different road than I am. But they're flesh and blood just like me. They've got the same aspirations that I've got. They've got more in common, with me than, the differences. And those differences are really cultural. I just think that respect for one another is really what we're talking about, and not necessarily saying that I'm better than you are, or you're better than I am. We're just on different roads, and roads that work for us in our own lives.
Thank you.
Just to answer your first part of the question, why aren't we all one religion? I think that goes back to history. Historically speaking, Judaism came first, and Christianity and Islam. And it really is a matter of who kind of went in what direction. So it's not so much, Judaism came first and Christianity. So let's say Islam did not come after that, then why aren't we all Christian? And the same goes for Islam, why aren't we all Muslim? And it just kind of depends on where you were living in that part of the time, part of time, and what part of the world you were living in. So that's kind of a historical question. And in terms of tolerance and acceptance, I can speak from a Muslim. As I mentioned in the panel, there's a verse in the Quran that says there shall be no compulsion in religion. And so we're not really expecting everyone, to convert to Islam or to be a Muslim, and God does not expect that either, because in the Quran it says that we are all from the people of the book. Jewish individuals and Christians and Muslims, we're all people of the book. So that kind of is a coexisting theory, in my opinion. So really, it's not about, you have to be Muslim, or you have to be Christian, you have to be Jewish. It's really about just accepting the fact that we're all people of the book, and we're all in it together, believing in one God.
To add to that, I think this question is very important, because when we talk in interfaith, people think, why don't you get in one mosque and just make one prayer, make it easier for everybody? We're not talking about anything like that. We have, like I said in the beginning of my speech, we have more in common, but we do have differences. And those differences are for us to understand and tolerate each other and understand each other and respect each other, like Rabbi said. And God himself in the Quran said, this is true from your God. If you will, you believe. If you will, you also do not believe. So we have the free will. Even people who are not religious, we as religious people, Christian, Jew, Muslim, Hindu, we have to respect the non-religious people. Quran said, if people worship idol, do not insult the idols. And the question is why? It's just idol. They're worshiping wood and rock. And God said, if you insult their God, which you consider to be less God, they will insult your God in return. And you will be the one who insulted your God. Another word, if you truly respect your God and your religion, you will respect someone else's God and his religion, his choice. This is the fundamental. If you don't, the more you put on some other people, no matter what religion they follow, no religion at all, is a reflection of what is inside you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
We have a question in the back.
This gentleman here raised his hand from
Oh.
very beginning. Please, give him chance.
Okay.
I just wanted to make one clarification on something you said, Mr. Kumana, about the brand points you made.
Yeah.
They actually ban all public religious expression in terms of like a veil for a Christian or a young and everything. So the interpretation you gave was kind of that it was targeted at the Muslim faith, but then it's not the case. And the second point was a question for Mrs. O'Day. You said that it was hardest to practice your faith here in Louisville, but you didn't really expand on that. So I was wondering if it was more just a lack of access to the community that you mentioned, or was it more of a discrimination?
No, it's not lack of community. I go to a mosque pretty often, and I have that sense of community here. It's more of the discrimination, the mentality that exists here. I've received a lot of threats, and I get a lot of stares. And just the other day, I was driving, and a guy on his car had a bumper sticker saying that he wants to kill all Muslims. And I've only seen that in Milledgeville. I haven't seen it in other parts of the country. So I definitely would say it's a discrimination thing and not a community thing whatsoever.
I did not understand your question. Was it a question or comment?
It was just a clarification. It was just the way you presented it. It gave, at least the way I interpreted your presentation of it, was that it was France not being able to wear the hijab was something that was targeted to restrict Muslims.
In France?
Yes, but it's actually happening. You can't wear a yarmulke.
No. I said if Muslim girl wear hijab, she cannot go to public school.
Right.
She must take off hijab.
Right, and in the same sense, if the Jewish boy wants to go wearing a yarmulke, he would also be asked to take that off.
He would.
He will not be allowed to go to school. Yes.
Same way that a Christian, like if a Christian were to wear the traditional veil, that's not the same.
Yes, which I interpret as, the brain inside, educating that is more important than the cover of the brain.
Right, I agree with you, but I was just saying that that's just more since that France wants to install more of a secular public sphere, and that the religious, they don't want that kind of religion to come into the public sphere in that sense.
But what will you prefer? Giving people freedom to choose and wear, like here. When I go to school, it's amazing how you students dress to school. Trust me. From one that cover everything and to the one that is so liberal. And we are here, we're talking about the education. No one is focusing on anybody. So that freedom, human beings can only flourish when they are given the ultimate freedom to express themselves. When you limit that, they start getting fit. They don't want to talk. They don't want to do this. And that limits their achievement. Oh, okay. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay. Yes. Thank you.
This is to the whole panel. What would be your suggestion for students at Georgia College to kind of consolidate their diverse student body?
So I'm a student here, I'm a junior, and I go here. And so really, if you want to know more about diversity or other cultures or religions, really just come talk to me or anyone who doesn't look like you, I guess, if that makes sense. Really, I don't care. I'm not going to get offended if you ask a dumb question, or I won't get offended. I'm really open to any conversation or any questions anyone might have. So, really, I truly mean it. If anyone has any questions, want to ask me something, want to get to know me, I am more than happy to do that. So that's definitely one step, just having that conversation with someone who, same university as you, same age, same kind of vibe, I guess. So that's the first step, definitely.
Okay.
This is my third visit to your college, and I want to congratulate you. From my last visit, I've seen a lot of changes, starting from the road. When I visit back in 2012, 2007, I can see a lot of changes. But I've been here for this kind of event 3 times, so this is not my first visit. And this is the biggest crowd I've ever had. So this is the beginning. Organize more of this. When Muslim celebration come, invite non-Muslim. I will say that to the director or the president of Muslim Student Association. Same thing to other religious organizations. People need to know. If you don't invite them, when it's iftar, call them to break fast with you. Even if they're not fasting, let them enjoy the food. When it's Christmas, how Christmas are celebrated in different parts of America. Organize some educational program to educate students. But if students are not leading the way, you are the future leaders, then we have problem in the future. If it started in the school, and my experience inviting students to my center, they said, I hope we start this in elementary school. They say it's too late to introduce people at it in the college. We should know about each other religion. I mean, that's government big debate about it. But to know about intolerance and all this, they say should start very early. So people, they will not live in this fear.
I just, real quick, there's a rabbinic maxim that asks, who is wise? Who in this world is wise? And the answer is, it's the person who learns from other people, from all other people. And, Serena here is one of those people that you can, learn from. If you get to know her and approach her and embrace her. So I would just say, be wise. There are other people on this campus who are, different like Serena, but you can actually learn from those people.
Okay. All right, I think we have final question. Thank you. Thank you, panel.
First of all, I'd like to thank all of you for being here. And I guess my question to the council would be if you could speak about Sharia law and the misconceptions surrounding it.
Thank you.
I guess I have to speak most of the part. Sorry for my noisy voice. Sharia law. Sharia. Muslims are going to implement Sharia. They're going to chop off your hand and your head. Well, if that's what they were going to do, they will all move into country that declare Sharia. And that will be ISIS country. What they run away from there? I brought a book with me called Refuting ISIS. It's available on Amazon. Sharia simply means way of life. Way of life. Way of life from when you wake up, before you go to sleep, what do you say before you sleep? While you are sleeping, your soul is in the hand of God. When you wake up, how you praise God and thank Him for the life again. Before you eat, before you start driving, when you get married, it involves in every aspect of your life. Now, when they talk about Sharia on the media, they don't mean that. They mean the criminal law system of Islam that was implemented back then, in the time where there was no law in the world. But at least back then, it meant system for people. Now, is that what Muslims want to implement today for everybody? No. We are here to honor and respect American law and follow in every detail because it makes life better for everybody, and that's what we want to be part of. Now, within that law, we are allowed to practice our own faith. So the Sharia law, some Muslim countries like Saudi Arabia, maybe Iran, some of them implement portion of Sharia law. Places like Malaysia, where whole population are not Muslims. Muslim, they have conventional code, and they have Sharia code for area that relate to Muslims. And all these things are done in agreement of what Muslims want for themselves. If they want to get married, for example, where they should go? They go to Sharia code and do that. So the Sharia mean what Muslims practice every day. The legal law, God say in the Quran, لِكُلِّ مِنْكُمْ جَعَلْنَا شِرْعَةً وَمِنْهَاجًا. I made law for each and every one of you So everybody follow your way. And which way is the best, people will always end up practicing that. So we are practicing Sharia within American law, and we are very happy with it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank everybody for, especially our students, for staying to the end. We rarely see this, so I really appreciate that. And let's have another round of applause for our panel.